Hey everybody, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I am Alana Yvonne with Truly Great Life, and we are on way number 25, getting down to the wire. So way number 25 is the character strength of creativity. Now, before I jump into what creativity is, please, if you have not already listened to or watched ways 1 and 2, check them out at some point. They are kind of foundational excuse me, to the rest of the ways that I'm showing here and sharing. Okay, creativity. So I'm sure that some things have already popped into your mind about what creativity means and how you feel about creativity and how creative you feel. And let's go into the definitions so you can maybe expand that idea you have of it a little bit to understand, just like with all these ways, you've got all of these 24 character strengths that I'm sharing here. Every single human being on the planet does. The only question, like with muscles, is are you using it, right? Most of us have all of the same muscles. The only question is how developed they are, how strengthened they are, how much you're using them. So these character strengths are in you. You have them. They are tools in your toolkit. Just need to learn a little bit about them and then pull it out when you're dealing with a situation, when you're dealing with a challenge, to inch that way towards happy, right? To make your day a little bit brighter, a little bit better, whatever it is you've going on, all right? So we are down now to the last 2 character strengths that I'm sharing, and then there's a couple more ways I'm sharing before the end of this series. So creativity. Creativity is when you have original ideas, innovative ideas, adaptive ideas, right? This ties into a lot of the other strengths also that we've already talked about, a lot of the other ways, okay? You can use humor and be creative in your humor, right? You can use creativity with your love of learning. You can use it with your appreciation of beauty and excellence and being in awe. There's a million ways, right, to be creative, to think about creativity, to use your creativity, and to bump it up. Okay, so original, adaptive ideas, right? Ingenuity. This is the ability to think creatively or cleverly about a situation or about a problem and how to solve it. So it's like original thinking, right? It's, or maybe if, you're someone who it's harder to come up with the original ideas, but once someone has shared an idea, let's say you're in a group setting, a group project, teamwork, whatever it is, and then you're able to kind of jump off of that. That's kind of the beautiful synergy of when in a brainstorming session you're with other people and, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts it's made of, right? So how can you be creative in a group setting? How can you be, creative, and use that ingenuity? And this is again another lens for empathy. It's another lens of seeing other people, appreciating their differences in their creativity, appreciating that they may be expressing creativity in a totally different way than you would ever even think about. Many different ways to use all of these strengths and to express them. This is also where, you, with ingenuity, with coming up with a creative way to solve a problem or see a situation or solve a problem, this is where we talk about in schools and in work, like out of the box thinking. It's a little bit cliche now, right? But what does that really mean? Can you be original in your thought? Can you bring a different angle, right? Can you come up with a different approach? Something a little fresh, maybe. Something that hasn't been expressed before or thought before. If you've been following along with these recordings, this is my being creative or using my creativity muscle in sharing these ideas, germinating from positive psychology, let's say, but then I kind of go off and bring my own spin on them. So that is my approach to this topic in what is a creative way for me. So what are you doing that maybe you've seen other people do or is discussed at length in other circles, but how can you bring your own spin to it? How can you put it in your own words and maybe launch off from there into something that at least you haven't heard before in the same way or seen before in the same way? There's that saying in, it's King Solomon again, So what's Mishle? I think it's Proverbs. That there is nothing new under the sun. Somewhere. I'll have to check that. But if there's nothing new, you've heard the line, there's nothing new under the sun. If there's nothing new under the sun, and you can disagree, agree, think about it, and then how does creativity fit into that? So maybe it's that there's, just potential, right? The potential is there. Now I'm thinking of another, I should have looked up these, I'm just thinking of them now, right? So there is something, I don't know if it's Ralph Waldo Emerson, about opportunities like strings on a harp waiting to be struck. In any case, let's just say for creativity's sake, in addition to you having it, it is out there for you to express it. There is room for everybody at the table to express their creativity in a way that is authentic for you, in a way that is good for you, and in a way that can benefit someone else. So creativity, I'm still going through the definition, but I'm going off on little tangents. Creativity is a really important quality for all of us to feel tapped into on some level. And even if that's as simple as, and I don't even, maybe not even simple, but let's say with crafting, okay? I'm looking at just a little thing I have on my desk, right? A little keychain. If you're doing an art project or a crafting project, you're using creativity, even if you don't think you're an artist. You have that bone in you. It's just a question of, does the environment support it? Are you in an environment that is supporting your creativity? And can you express your creativity without comparing it to someone else's creativity? Because the minute you go down that comparison, road, it's like game over, man, because we are not the same in our expression of these strengths. We all express them differently in ways that we can express them differently in ways that are unique to us. So for example, an example of creativity, and think as I'm sharing this story of a time that you felt creative, let's say in the physical sense of something that you've actually created. And if this is something that's a high strength for you that you use all the time, then this can just be a reminder that for those of us who do not feel or identify as super creative, crafty, and again, I'm looking at the art world now, there are still these untapped abilities to be original and creative and crafty and artistic. Do we seek them out, or do we limit ourselves, and to say, we're not crafty, I'm not crafty, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative in that way, so I don't go there. That's not what I do. But you can learn how to, bake something or cook a meal, and you can learn how to do an art project. I just got together with a bunch of friends and had a DIY craft party at a local art place, and everyone, it was really interesting how there were a few people that felt very at home and very comfortable and went, gravitated right away to what they wanted to do artistically, and then there was a whole bunch of us who were just kind of like deer in the headlights because it was a choose your own project. And I think that's part of, feeling like this isn't something I do often, or I'm not creative. So in any case, it was a lot of fun, and I now have this lovely little thing that I created, which for me was an expression of creativity, even if it looks to, let's say, one of my kids as pretty amateur. And that's okay, because it was fun. It was fun. So what creative activity are you doing now, not like right this moment, but nowadays, that gives you that pleasure, that joy, that sense of, creativity, artisticness? This ties into the A in the formula, right? Accomplishment or achievement. And what can you do more of to feel creative in something else? And this also involves taking risk on some level. Anytime we do something in an original way, or in an inventive way, or in a way that is new for us, and there's no guaranteed outcomes. I talked about this in the way of perseverance. Like, can you handle risk? Can you handle not knowing? Can you handle making a mistake? So depending on what you're doing to express your creativity, that is a wonderful laboratory, if you will, of playing with, in a very safe way, right? Low risk way, of playing with putting something out there, creating something, a piece of music, a poem, writing a letter, whatever it is, even a school assignment, a speech at work, whatever you have going on that's requiring you to do something original, think outside the box. I know that complicated overuse saying, but to do something and in a way though that is low risk, the more we can get used to using that muscle of creativity, the more it can then be called upon in situations that maybe have a greater risk reward, right? Or there's a little bit more at stake. So if you're used to taking chances in a way that doesn't really matter in the long term, this little art thing I did, but it kind of fueled my creativity muscle, and I bring that into these videos, for example, or in other things that I do. And so what can you do to exercise that muscle? Because once it's woken up, like with all of these ways, once you use those ways in one situation, you have that muscle memory to maybe call on it in another situation. And just by reframing, how can I use this muscle? How can I use this strength in a new situation that comes up is already a creative act. I think it's a creative way of asking the question. If you ask the same questions, how much in that groove are you in? It's like when you go bowling and people can use those guardrails so you don't get out. Can you let down the guardrails, right? In your creative endeavors. Okay, continuing with the definition. Creativity can also be seen as doing things, seeing things in a new way, a unique way, a different way. So historically, sometimes people feel threatened by new ideas, by people who see things differently. Especially sometimes if you look in family units, there can be a lot in those relationships where, parents and children, when they don't see eye to eye or they see things in a different way or they're creative in a different way, there can be a lot of misunderstanding or judgment. So where in your relationships, if you have kids, if you are a kid with your parents, with your grandparents, with whoever, cousins, in work, how can you spot creativity in them, even if it's different? Again, for the purposes of trying to get to harmonious relationships, which is one element of helping us have a happy day. How can you kind of smooth the gears, if you will? And again, that all of these ways help with that. And how can you see yourself as a creative person? And if you need to go back in time to when you were a kid, because kids are naturally extremely creative, right? Most kids. All kids. It's just one of the more common strengths, right, in very young children. So if you need to go back to when you were a young child, what did you do that was creative? Did you invent games? Did you, like to doodle or draw paintings? Or, what was creative for you? Was it music? Was it acting? Was it singing? Instruments? Games? Organizing people? I mean, that also ties into leadership, but there's a creativity element there of how to get people to work together. Also requires original thinking in a sense, right? Because you got to motivate people to want to work together. So creativity doesn't have to just be art, and it doesn't have to just be the arts. It's very much also about working with people, and it's also about being, I think with creativity, do you give yourself time and space to think about stuff? Again, we're living in a culture now that is so nonstop. Distractions are all over the place. Some that we put on ourselves and some that are just shoved in our faces. How can you create space to be with your ideas? Creative ideas, right? How can you make space in your day? Maybe it's even, you're like, I'm going to take 5 minutes today. I'm going to take, there's something called morning pages that people who journal or write or don't can do. And I've journaled since I was 12. I've been journaling for a very, very long time. But, if you take a notebook or stickies and just you have an idea, you capture it. Can you take 5 minutes to think about something that you would like to be more creative in and just brainstorm without judging? Okay. One more thing about how to think about creativity is that, you've got these good ideas, you have new ways of looking at things, you can quickly come up with ways to solve problems. And just remember, this is not limited to artistic achievement. It includes it, but it's not limited to it, like I was saying. All right. So how can we bump up our use of creativity? Thinking of some things? One thing we know from the research is that creativity is supported, enhanced, if you will, when it is in an environment that is open. When you're in an environment that supports the idea of creativity, is open, is flexible, it is more casual, like it's not a formal environment, and again, is reinforcing the idea of, again, I think of Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus, right? Like, take chances, get messy. Like, I know there's one more line, but I'm forgetting it. What can you do, and what is your environment like? Do you work in an environment that supports creativity? In your home, do you have an environment that supports creativity? What can you do to support creativity? At work, at home, at school. The things that constrain creativity, that will limit it, is time pressure. This is what the research shows, though I'm thinking there can be a benefit to having a time limit. Definitely a time limit to getting things done, like giving yourself, because the vacuum will fill up the space that you give it, right? Everything expands. So if you put a time limit on, let's say, getting tasks done, like 10 minutes, I'm going to clean my office. You could bring creativity into it by saying, I'm going to do it in a new way, or maybe that's not a great example, but if the thought of having a time limit, well, in any case, the research says it's constrained by time limits. So what does that mean? You need time to not ruminate, but to percolate. You need time to get in the groove. You need time to get in that state of flow, right? That engagement. And that's one of the reasons why when we are engaged in a creative activity, in any activity that we're engaged in, it is a creative activity, time flies. We don't recognize, we don't have that sense of time. It's like suspended. Okay, so maybe leave yourself a couple hour window if you can, maybe once a week, once a month, like a date with yourself, all right? A creative date where you just have it open, and then have the ability, if the time is up, to just hit the snooze button, if you will, on it and extend it out, all right? The other thing in the research that shows creativity gets limited by is very close supervision, otherwise known as micromanaging. So whether that's in a classroom or at work, if you feel like someone is always checking, that's going to stifle creativity. And the other thing that stifles creativity is criticism, critical examination, right? If you are going to be judged and you know that, and if there's, let's say, something very dependent on the outcome for you that you are wanting to be favorably judged, that might constrain your creativity. If there is no issue in what you're doing of being judged in a material way, like it's not an art competition or a writing competition or a music competition or a grade, let's say, then like the doors are open for creativity. So just to be aware that when it's like an open and a supportive, reinforced situation or environment, that supports the idea of creativity, that enhances the use of creativity. And what limits it is like time limitation, a critical environment, and very close micromanaging or very close supervision. It's almost like getting in the way, right? Okay, so that's just some things to think about. So, in what situations are you most creative? In what situations would you like to be more creative? Can you think of a problem that you've had recently where you used creativity to help solve it, right? Think of any problem, any situation you've had right now where you've needed to come up with solutions, options, ways to solve it. You were using creativity. Okay? We are not all going to be Michelangelo, right? This is not about being an artist on the world stage or a, genius researcher on the world stage. And if that's you, that's awesome. You definitely know you're using creativity in your work. All right. So how can you use it in all your different environments, with your family, at home, at school, at work, in the world? And what holds you back from expressing creativity? Is there maybe a story in your head that you're telling yourself, possibly backed with evidence, that you're not a creative person? And I invite you to be open to exploring why that isn't necessarily the truth, even if it feels like it is, because we're always growing and changing, right? And if you have this piece of creativity, this character strength of creativity in you, it just maybe needs to be invited to come out and play again. So is there something that you would really love to dabble in, play in, try, that would expand your current use of creativity? So think about what's holding you back. And then what's a new area that you can apply your creativity muscle to? I think I mentioned before, I've started learning piano. That was probably with love of learning. And I'm in the beginning, so it's a lot of learning. It's not as much creativity, but even the act of learning to read the music and play the notes feels creative. I feel creative. I am creating music, even if it's not great and even if it's not original, right? It's fun. It's fun. All right. So think about what you would like to do that would involve your creativity muscle, and why aren't you doing it already? And if you are, how can you do it more, or how can you expand it to other areas? And think about how you feel when you are exercising that creativity muscle. And if you feel like you're not using it, go back in time to a time that you know you did. And how did it feel? What positive emotions were generated for you when you felt you were being creative, when you were creating? All right. So just a couple quotes I want to share. And this is actually from a professor of neurology and psychiatry. And I will share the link in the notes. Okay. While creative people have to have long periods of intense focus, and that ties into what we said before about needing open time. While creative people have to have long periods of intense focus because they have to have technical expertise in their field. Okay, so this is related to work, okay? This is related to career. What I've observed and read is that some level of release from that control is necessary for creativity to percolate. It is often when we let our minds wander that aha moments occur. At the same time, creativity clearly has to do with training, early exposure, and familial interest. It goes on to say, because no matter what your genetic or biological disposition, if you don't have the environmental factors, it decreases the likelihood that you are going to be a creative expert. Okay, so this is a quote specifically related to becoming an expert. And there's a lot of talk there about how do you become an expert, okay? And if you want to be an expert, or if you are an expert, like, how does this quote resonate with you? So it's about having like intense focus and dedicated time to the topic that you're researching, working on, whatever, right? A bunch of writers who are up every single day at 4 or 5 in the morning, and they are just pounding those keys for a couple hours, and that is part of, their process, making that committed time. But then we all know examples of like when we're in the shower and all of a sudden we have an inspiration, we have a creative download, we got a creative hit of an idea, totally unrelated. Could be when you're working out, going on a long walk. So there's the aspect, if you're, wanting to boost that creativity, maybe for a work-related thing or a play-related thing, whatever it is, yes, the time that you spend on that topic matters, and the time you're away from it also matters. Okay? All work and no play. Oh, what's what makes Johnny a dull boy? I don't know. I'm not getting that one right. But okay, so think about that. There is a study, okay? Research also shows that even, this is, just something that was suggested in this research. I can also include the link. Engaging in a creative activity just once a day can lead you to a more positive state of mind. So if we're all talking about ways to happy days, what is one creative act you can do today after this, recording, or later today? What is one creative thing you can do every day? If every day sounds like too much, once a week, and then start adding when you can. All right? Can lead you to a more positive state of mind. You know why? Why do you think? There's something fun. There's like a sense of agency for yourself. Your whole life might be falling apart. Your whole life might be a total chaos scene. You might be overwhelmed by what you read in the news or see online, or, if you're looking outside of yourself all the time at what everyone else is doing. When you take that break and you do a creative act, okay? A creative activity. Play an instrument, doodle, draw, write, design. If you do knitting, baking, cooking, just some kind of creative activity. It's interesting, actually. I know some people like to clean their house, right? And that could be possibly, I guess, if you're doing it in an original way or a creative way. I don't know, what do you think? Could cleaning your house be considered a creative act? It's creating a cleaner room or house. In any case, do something creative. Maybe it's too productive. I don't know. You have to think about what resonates for you. Doodling is fun. I like doodling. And that can get you in a positive state of mind. So even if it's 5 minutes, play the piano or hum a song, create a new song, right? Draw a picture. We don't have excuses anymore for not learning new things, right? Or not learning new ways to be creative, because we have this lovely thing called the internet, where people have put videos upon videos and articles upon articles about how to do things. So if you're learning a new thing, let's say you need to repair a lawnmower or repair something in the house. I don't know how much creativity is going in it, but you're definitely learning a new thing. And maybe that also ties into it. You see how these character strengths can be overlapped and brought together? All right. So when it comes to creativity at work, this is where your enthusiasm has to come in. I should rephrase. This is where it helps if your enthusiasm, your passion, your interest comes in. Some of us are at work that we are not excited about, and that is a challenge that you can give yourself. How can I bring my strength of creativity into this work situation that maybe you're trying to get out of and you're looking for a new job, or maybe it's difficult, but is there some way to bring creativity to it? Is there some way to do something new and original in your work situation? Okay? So again, when it comes to people who want to become an expert in the field, right, who want to succeed in a field career-wise, creativity is going to be important. And that passion and enthusiasm that fuels your creativity, your way of solving problems, your way of understanding, coming up with solutions, looking at it a new way, whatever that field is, if you are not excited by that field, maybe you've had familial, cultural, societal pressure, school pressure to pursue a certain field, maybe you thought that going into a certain field was going to be something that it turned out not to be. You know, putting aside the financial aspects of a career for now, okay? If you can bring some connection to that meaning and purpose behind your choice of a career, bringing your creativity into it, there will be more emotional connection, more like really enjoying what you do or love of what you do. So if someone is blessed, right? A lot of people say, I'm so lucky to do the work I do. They're intrinsically, when they're, you know, in the work that they're doing and they're creative, they're intrinsically motivated in the job. Okay? If you went into a career, you know, just because you thought it was prestigious or would look good or be a lot of money, but you are not somehow intrinsically connected to it, you may not be using that creativity muscle as much. It depends. You might be bored. You may resent it. You know, it's not necessarily the only variable to consider, right? The prestige and the money. You want to think about how aligned you are with what that field is about, and you want to think about how you spend your time and what you think about and why it makes sense for you, and where that passion or enthusiasm or enjoyment also comes in. Okay, and that ties into creativity. All right. So again, how much of a value is creativity for you? So it's a strength that we all have, but it can also be a value. Some artists, musicians, creators, you know, creativity would probably be one of the highest values that they have. And so everything in pursuit of that creative expression is worth it, right? For others, creativity is like a means to an end. So if you are staying home, a stay-at-home parent with your kids, you know, those are different values maybe that you're tapping into, but can you see how obviously you're bringing creativity into the day all the time? I think any parent has to bring creativity to the table because every kid is different and every kid has different needs and different personalities. And so I think as parents, we, whether we think of it or not, are using creativity all the time, ideally, because we want to, again, meet the kids where they're at and who they're at, like where they are, but who they are. And that requires a lot of things, but also creativity. Because what works for, if you have more than one kid, what works for one kid doesn't work for the other. Gotta like use some creativity. Okay, so we're all creative. We're all creative. Tapping now into one of my top strengths of spirituality. Any of you who, you know, and stick with me here if you're like, oh, God again. But yes, God, creator, source, whatever you want to call it, universe, if that's, you know, more comfortable for you. But like, that's the ultimate creator, right? Those of you who are familiar with, let's just say, you know, Torah or the Bible, God is the ultimate creator. And if we, as human beings, are created in the image of God, one of the things that means is that we're also creators. How does that resonate? You know, in the beginning, God created X, Y, Z, and A, B, C and saw that it was good. So what are you creating? What are you creating that is good? What are you creating in your life that is good? We're not here to consume only, and we're living in times of tons of distraction and consumption. So what are you creating to balance that out? What are you putting out there to balance that out? Are you creating healthy relationships? Are you creating physical structures that people can live in? Are you creating safe environments for people to express themselves in? Are you creating tools and items and objects that make people's lives easier? What are you creating? Are you creating ways for people to, you know, be better people, be them, whatever it is? What are you creating? Because we're all creators. We're meant to create. And if you're not creating, why is that? And what is it going to take for you to finally say, I'm going to create? And now I'll just end with, the question of AI, people. This is something that a lot of us have different mixed opinions about, and we certainly don't know where it's necessarily going. How do you think ChatGPT and the other similar tools and AI in general is going to impact the aspect of creativity? It's a big one. What does it mean for us as adults? What does it mean for our kids? Is it something that can enhance creativity, or is it something that's going to stop it up? If the tool is neutral and then it becomes a question of how it's used, how can we embrace progress in technology in a way that enhances our creativity, right? Enhances that we are creators. We can be creators. So these are things these are things to think about. But creativity, again, that one simple thing, if nothing else, find a creative endeavor for today. A simple creative project, okay? Let's make it easy on the physical, okay? So if you have some colored pencils or watercolors, draw something. And if you don't know what to draw, take out a mug or some fruit from your kitchen and try doing some still life, okay? If you want to move, put on your favorite music and create a dance, a total free dance. Free dance, by the way, is an awesome way to release stress, boost your endorphins, get your movement in, have fun. It's awesome, and you can be creative. It's very easy to follow along, in these programs we all have access to now online of whatever. But I say, if you want to exercise your creativity muscle, turn on some music and just, boogie on down. Okay? What's a creative way? Bake something new. Play an instrument. Write a poem. Write a haiku, right? Challenge yourself to write a song. I don't know, something new, okay? So I wish for all of us creative days and creative moments, because I think when we tap into creativity, we're tapping into part of our essence, which is to be creative. We're creating something every time. When you smile at someone, you are creating some goodwill, even if it's not reciprocated, okay? When you say a kind word to someone, you are creating something good, even if you can't touch it. So what can we create on an emotional level with those in our lives as well? We talk about people, I know I was going to end this, but I'll just, if you work with a boss, if you are the boss and you have a boss, you work in a team at school, whatever it is, you can think of people who are creating an environment, right? We talk about creating an environment. So you can use your strength of creativity to create a positive environment. You can use your strength of creativity to create a negative environment or a less supportive environment. So it's a kind of different take on this aspect of creativity. But just be aware that you are an extremely powerful human being with the capability of creating a lot of good in your relationships, in your physical creations, in your experiments in cooking and art and music and whatever. How do you want to be creative? And how can you do that today? Thank you for listening, and see you on the next one.